Welcome back to Minus 16. It's that podcast where, of course, we talk about tech, all the very latest in tech and the business of YouTube. Still just the two of us. Alex is away for a few more days yet in Brazil. He looks like I've seen a couple of pictures. It looks like he's properly resting. And Daniel is here just.
Barely hanging on.
Bit of flu hanging around, and we got him on his last embers of energy before he crashes out for the night. So we're going to keep this one short, sharp and tight, but we've got some stuff to talk about. I think first of which is you were mentioning to me just a few moments ago that there's a Samsung event scheduled for next week that I think you're part of. I know no more.
A virtual event is happening Tuesday morning my time, and their rumors are pointing towards the slim phone that they sort of took the S25 Edge, that they took the wraps off and unpacked in January.
That's right.
I don't know much more about it yet in terms of what the device is or what it does or any internals. I just am assuming that's what it's going to be, but we haven't got anything official yet. But that's coming on Tuesday. So it's still something happening in the Samsung world. Like, I know in the Apple world it's kind of dried up a little bit, but Samsung world, whether it be software releases or like product or hardware, there's always something that's kind of pushing the boundaries forward.
Oh, trust me, there's quite a lot going on in the Apple world. We'll talk about it. There's quite
we'll get to that.
There is quite a lot of heat going on at the moment. Not so much product, I'll grant you. So when you were out at Unpacked in January, I think you were, if I remember our pod then, there was security guards between you and the phone. All they kind of showed was its side profile, roughly what it's going to be, but it was no hands-on, no touchy, nothing.
Couldn't get near it. Anytime you sort of took a little step past the bollards, try and get a closer shot of it, they were immediately going, please step back. So there is anticipation around what it is and what the internals are going to be like. I'm excited just to try and get it in my hands, because just from what I saw at Unpacked, it looked pretty incredible, the thin profile. I'm not yet sure what the whole basis of a thin phone is, but I'm not really going to question it just yet, because I think we've been asking for new hardware and innovation in smartphones for a while, and the fact now we're getting something different, I think that's at this stage cause to be celebrated instead of questioned. At least that's from my point of view.
Yeah, well, as you know, I mean, if the rumours are true, and I think they're pretty locked in, that we'll be following that same route in September. What's your one called, as far as you know?
They called it they announced it at Unpacked. It's called the S25 Edge.
Because ours is meant to be called the Air, we think iPhone Air, but again, it's same thing. It's going to have a different camera layout on the back, and it's going to be thin, very, very thin. Feature set wise, how's it going to compare up against the Ultras? Will it be, because the rumours on Apple Street are that it's going to be a hell of a price, the thin. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be slightly cheaper than the Pro Maxes, slightly, but of course, we don't know quite what we're getting on there yet, if it is going to be a single camera or what the layout's going to be. So I wondered how...
I could definitely tell that it's from the Unpacked, it looks like there's two cameras on the back. What they are and anything like that, that's Samsung's yet to sort of unveil that. So I guess that's what Tuesday's going to be, is this event where they can sort of showcase and talk about everything else apart from just what it looks like. So yeah, price-wise, it's going to be curious as well, because like you said, if the iPhone 17 Air is rumored to be, more expensive than the base model Pro, that's quite a leap for a phone that does less, if you really believe what the phone's going to be, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't quite know how they're going to pitch it, where it's going to sit. And then, of course, I've got to make a decision later in the year from a channel point of view. Do I buy the new Pro Max or do I buy the Air? My tendency at the moment is to think to buy the Air, because it's a newer phone to talk about. And I've already got the Pro Max. The cameras are going to be pretty much the same on the Pro Max I've got now to this year's, I'd have thought. So I'm thinking possibly the Air is the way to go. And operating systems and feature sets, do you know what you're likely to be getting on yours?
Not a clue.
Presumably more after next week.
I can only imagine it's going to be a version of One UI, but I don't know if there's going to be anything exclusive or different that it does over a normal phone. None of that's been revealed yet. The event's on Tuesday.
So you've been through this kind of loop a few times now. At these kind of events, what kind of detail will they go through with you? How much information will you be given?
Well, the event on Tuesday isn't an influencer event. It's a global one, live streamed on YouTube. But the ones we get, like pre-unpacked briefings and stuff like that. They, at that point, they don't really have, well, they have specs and numbers, but they've kind of pivoted away from telling us those, and they focus a lot on whatever marketing is going to be focusing on. So like S25, we saw a lot of Google Gemini integration. Like that was heavily what we were told about, despite the fact that isn't what sells the phone. Like we barely got information about camera. We didn't get much about AI, or we did a little bit about AI, but most of it was geared towards the Gemini and Samsung integration. So that's the type of detail we get, and we get a lot of demonstrations of those sort of features on the spot. It's very interactive. You kind of move around different zones, but that's an in-person one. Virtual ones are a lot more bland. You kind of just get delivered like a speech and a couple of visuals, and then that's it. That's what you got to run with.
And if they've got this, so this announcement next week is just a general public one on YouTube, you say, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how soon do you think devices could be actually in hands for the public?
I genuinely have no idea. This is the thing. I have no idea yet at the moment. This is all stuff that we're going to learn about hopefully next week. They're keeping it very lock and key at the minute.
And presumably, again, just touching briefly on the tariffs, with this, for the people in the States, could this, I mean, will they have been shipped yet, do you think, if they're having an event next?
He put an exemption on smartphones and chips and
of course,
electronics.
Yeah.
So, and also I think as well, Samsung don't manufacture their phones in China; they're manufactured in Vietnam. And I think he paused the tariffs, at least from last memory, in Vietnam. Yeah. I can't keep up with where his head's at. He changes his mind.
Do you think he can?
I don't think he can. Not a chance.
What did I say yesterday?
Yeah. Not a chance. He called Mattel, the toy company, a country. So whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yes. Let's not talk about dolls and stuff. Yes, I've watched plenty of the chat shows this week about that. So by the time on our next pod, you should definitely have more details about it.
Absolutely. Next pod will be the one to watch for that, for sure.
Okay, so we alluded to a moment ago that there's stuff going on with Apple, and not hardware, not software, very much courtroom based, and they are potentially in shit.
Tell me about this, because I actually have no knowledge of what's going on.
Okay, so I spent a lot of last weekend researching and reading about it. I've written a piece about it as well, because it just intrigued me so much. So this goes back to the Apple Epic battle of 2021, 2020.
Okay. Oh, yep, Fortnite.
Yep, that's right, that whole thing. And basically, ostensibly, Apple won. They got their App Store left intact as long as they went away and kind of listened to what the judge said. So then this period of time went past. The judge didn't see an awful lot happening. She decided to call them back in. And this is where the issues begin to heat up. She called them back and said, well, what's going on, chaps? Where are we at? And they made up a whole load of hyperbole about this, that, and telling us stories, basically. She wasn't convinced that what she was hearing was the absolute truth. For whatever reason, what happened in that hearing that day, she smelt a rat. So she said, okay, something's not right here. I want to see all your Slack. I want to see your emails. I want to see your iMessage. Which they had to give up.
This is to Apple, right? Not to Epic.
Yeah, this is Apple. Yeah, this is purely about Apple and their App Store and their anti-steering and anti-competitive behaviour. Because although they beat Epic kind of in that first battle, what she was really pissed about was their anti-competitiveness and particularly anti-steering. The fact that when you go to the App Store, developers weren't allowed to mention you can get this app elsewhere, possibly cheaper, and that Apple were always taking a cut from it. So, I mean, and it gets so bad. I mean, I've got a few quotes laid out. So I'm giving you a little bit of a backstory as to kind of where she got to. So whatever happened, she did not believe what she was being told in that courtroom. And the only person that comes out of this with any credit is Phil Schiller. Apparently, Phil Schiller goes back a long way with the App Store. It's kind of his baby with Steve Jobs. And when they were getting around, because it was to do with how much we charge developers if people are getting their apps outside the App Store, they could have said nothing. They could have said, look, we're making billions. Let's just let the developers. So Phil Schiller apparently said, look, we don't need to take a cut here. Let's just swallow it and go with what we've got. We've got away quite lightly here. But apparently, from everything I've read and researched, Cook and Maestri, who is the financial officer, the CFO of Apple, said, nah, we want something here. So they began coming up with all these numbers. Theoretically, they had an audit from who we don't really know, that said 27% is what we should charge them, just 3% less than the 30% that they generally take. The developers are saying, by the time we pay our Stripe fees, it's pointless anyway. And this really pissed her off. That really got her goat going. And she was not happy, the fact that they just come up with this spurious figure of 27%. And the crazy thing is, in the meetings, in the emails that she saw, the Slack notes she saw, words like scary were used. So they were saying that what Tim wants, so it was this splash screen. When you land on the app and you're going outside the App Store, they could have had a discreet little message at the bottom saying you're about to leave the App Store. Apparently, they said, no, make it scary. Make it more scary. And that's why you got that full splash screen. And that was Cook. That was Cook, apparently, that said this from the top. He said, and then they said to the judge, oh, no, in design language, scary means something different. Scary doesn't mean scary. No, it's scary design. It's edgy design. And she was like, I think, I mean, look, honestly,
for that, surely
she was not falling for that. I mean, again, just reading some of what I wrote, and this is direct quotes from her. The documents I saw were replete with misdirection and outright lies. This is the judge. Apple willfully chose not to comply with the court's injunction and did so with the express intent to create new anti-competitive barriers. That it thought this court would tolerate such insubordination was a gross miscalculation. As always, the cover-up made it worse. For this court, there is no second bite at the apple. I mean, and that's just some of it. She was not holding prisoners. Oh, yeah.
a good apple pun to bring
absolutely.
us home.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, I've just seen another quote here. To make up for all your bad behaviour, this is now her decision last week. You are no longer allowed to impose any commission or any fee on purchases that consumers make outside of an app. And that means you have no reason to audit, monitor, track, or require developers to report any purchases or any activities that consumers make outside of the app. Apple is no longer allowed to restrict or condition developer style, language, formatting, quantity, flow, or placement of links or purchase outside an app, because they were getting to this crazy. I mean, there's no defense for it. Basically, what they set up was, if I decided to go and buy an app outside of the App Store, for a 7-day period after that, any in-app purchases I made on whose ever website, Apple was still getting 27%.
Wow.
I mean, there is no excuse. There is no excuse. And it's
so
this whole
only
button.
because they signed up on the iPhone, even if they went and made an in-app purchase outside the iPhone on the computer, Apple was still taking that
still take a cut for 7 days.
The initial subscription. Oh.
And even then, they were doing these silly things. Like if you went past that splash screen and say, I don't know, Spotify, you wanted to go and subscribe to Spotify. You started off in the App Store. There's a button then that will take you to Spotify. What Apple decided to do, again, which pissed off the judge, suddenly all your login credentials would be wiped. You'd have to log in again. So on Spotify. And so she saw suddenly that every step of the way, they were putting friction in the way. If they just said, okay, look, fair cop. If you want to go somewhere else, we'll let you go somewhere else. We've got a very nice App Store. And let's face it, most people would probably stick with the App Store just because it's
100%.
It's easy. You know, we all think, I'm on the phone now, click, buy, done. Most people aren't, unless you've got a real vendetta against Apple or you think I can get it cheaper, fair enough. But then most people, and they didn't see that. They didn't see it. Every step of the way, they put hurdle after hurdle in the way, and they are in trouble. I forget the name of the guy, but there's a guy that was sent into court and lied under oath, who was on my shorts. Roman, somebody his name was. And, yeah, it was. It was. Sorry, I can't find his name right now. But there's somebody called Roman, who is another financial officer at Apple. He was sent in to lie about when this 27% fee was agreed on, and it turns out it was way earlier than they were saying. They'd already decided. You know, they've said they're going to comply, which they have done in the US now. Everything's different on the App Store, but they're going to appeal. I don't see how they can. This is. She said it was something in there that she said this is an injunction, not a negotiation. That's over. They've had their time when they could negotiate. They could have gone back to her and said, this is what we've done. We've tried to be reasonable. We've listened to what you say. We've taken away some of the friction. They haven't done it. And it's a Hollywood movie waiting to be made here. And I just wonder if this is the undoing of Cook. I just wonder because
it depends on how it gets reported. Because I hadn't seen, like, short of what the shorts you've been making about it and our discussions we've had, none of the big YouTubers are covering it. Like, I haven't seen any big conversations highlighting this, and you can imagine if this was at like Google or Samsung or someone like whenever there's an
Yeah.
exploding battery or a folding phone that didn't work, it's everywhere. Whereas
Yep.
this just seems like it's kind of under the radar a little bit in the
It,
space of what it's actually going to do.
yeah, I mean, it needs to come out. And also, something else that I went on to writing was that Apple could look a very different company by the end of this year. When you look at their business model, they've had services, which has been the growing part of their business. And okay, it's not really Apple Music, it's not really Apple TV, it is the App Store. Suddenly, they've had a massive chunk of revenue go there. They're behind on AI. What effect that's going to have with investors, we don't know. They've also and don't forget Google in court at the moment as well on antitrust. If they lose their court case, they could then end up not paying Apple 20 billion a year to be the default browser search engine. That's another 20 billion off the bottom of Apple's profit line. And even for Apple, 20 billion isn't back pocket change. I mean, 20 billion, I'm sure is pretty considerable. We're not talking million, we're talking billion. I mean, their whole business model is suddenly, I think it looks very fragile. And if the business model begins to wobble, they're going to turn to the CEO and say, look, you've led us to this. I don't know. It seems to me that things could be changing because he's been involved with this from the top. He has been in these meetings. He's been talking. His voice has been heard. His emails have been read. So, okay, none of us quite know what Judge Gonzalez Rogers saw, but it sounds, well, you can tell by the language that she's using. She ain't holding prisoners. So, I don't know.
The hard part would be like if Apple appeal it and they get a different judge who has a different feeling and has a different interpretation of what they see on the page, that can change things quite quickly. And Apple will just litigate the hell out of it to keep this in the courts as long as possible.
Oh, of course.
To avoid the whole decision and then avoid anything sort of being done like financial hit, or they'll just get a fine and they'll pay it. It just seems as if there's a way out for them. And they seem to obviously have the high price attorneys to be able to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing I would say on that, though, is that this was, I think, kind of their equivalent of a district court. And it's not usual from what I read last weekend for a judge to have them back in and then change. Because the first time through, she said, I'm not going to rewrite laws here. That's not what we do. This time round, she's almost sort of said, screw you. This is a court. It might be a lowly court, but it's a court, and I am the judge in this court, and you are going to do what I say. So, yes, they have got the best litigators and solicitors around. Of course they have. But, I mean, and yes, nothing happens quickly. It's taken 5 years from Apple versus Epic to get to this point.
But it's a pretty like on brand for Apple for this type of stuff. Like, you look at everything they've kind of had to change about their business has come from a court mandate. Whether that be in Europe having to allow side loading of apps or allow third-party app stores, or whether it be changing to USB-C because the Lightning cable is a proprietary port that's old, and Apple know that they can charge people lots of money for Lightning accessories, even when everyone else is on USB-C. Apple won't change unless they are dictated to, because they know they can get away with it for as long as they can. It kind of seems like it could come crumbling down if they're not careful with how they do their business.
I think so. They've got one playbook, be either on how they announce and promote gear or on how they react to when their wrists are being slapped. It's quite obvious they don't like being told no. They're not used to it. And they're the school ground bully. You know, they are... Yeah. They've been the leaders for a long time. They've been out in front for a long time. They're this brand that nobody can touch. And the thing is, they're so important to the economy now. They know that they're linked to pensions. So they know that if anything happened to them, this is going to have a massive effect on the American economy, global economy, I would assume. So we don't understand fully, I don't think, the business decisions that must go on at board level of a company that's that important to a nation's economy.
But you look at how they got there. They got there with the business practices that they're now, I guess, getting in trouble for. Like the stuff that got them to this level, that's the stuff that they've been doing since they began. And it's part of why they are so successful. Like the lock-in ecosystem with iMessage and the fact that none of their AirDrop and stuff works with anything outside of Apple, that is part of why they have got to where they are. So it shouldn't be a surprise one that, that they do that with every part of their business, like the App Store. That should not be a surprise. What's a surprise is how that they haven't had someone step up to them in the same way Epic has until when that first one happened.
Yeah, and I think it's now there's definitely been a change within government, certainly in the US, to big tech firms. The fact that Meta, Google, and Apple are all in court at the same time shows that the ring is closing in, and they realise that these companies are gatekeepers of the economy, and that they can, with great success also comes danger and responsibility. And I think they realise, perhaps a little too late, quite how much they've got to hold them by the nuts. These companies are so important.
But it's weird, like whenever you watch a future movie, like in a dystopian future, or like a TV show projects 10 to 15 years in the future, there's always one brand that dominates the entire tech landscape. Like, I don't know if you've seen Parks and Rec.
No.
Anyway, there's this TV show Parks and Rec, and its final season, they fast forwarded like 5 years, and everyone was using products from this brand called Grizzle. Grizzle pads, Grizzle phones, Grizzle drones, and they just dominated everything. They Grizzle social media. It was like they were the only brand that existed in tech. And like everyone kind of has this future where they think that there's going to be one brand that dominates it all. Whereas in reality, I don't think it's wise to let that happen.
No,
because then
clearly
you just
not.
have one company that controls all the information. And that was what they got done for that in that show, Grizzle. They were stealing consumer data and using it to, I guess, illegally spy on their users. So
a company stealing data, really?
Oh, never heard of it. But that's the point, is if you just let one company dictate everything, then it doesn't allow for other opportunities and people don't have a choice anymore. I think that's where people are, or the courts are going after Apple for the ecosystem lock-in and the App Store, because they're like, you can't have this monopoly because it can be very dangerous with that power that you've got.
And also, you mentioned a moment ago about the EU and sideloading and alternate app stores. If this ruling holds, all of that will be for nothing, because now you can go and buy your apps wherever you want.
Yep.
So suddenly all of that effort and time, why?
Whereas
all for nothing.
If they just agreed in the first place, they could have saved all that effort.
Yeah. It's. I mean, she said in there, the continuing lies is what's made it worse. You know what it's. As a kid, I'm sure you did it. You sort of tell one little white lie to your parents, and then you have to tell another white, and it begins to grow into this bigger thing. And before you realise, you think, if only I'd just come clean quicker, it would have. That's what they've been banged to rights on this. So, yeah, it's a watch this space. But things, I think I finished off by saying the App Store could change forever after this week, and their tidy little business model with all their safe return revenue they were getting from monthly subscriptions. And you know what it's like. You often forget the subscriptions you got. Another $6 goes out a month, whatever, 10 a month. And that could be upturned now. And each one doesn't sound a lot, but you think of the millions of people around the world that have got subs going through the App Store. So, yeah, it caught my imagination. It really did. I couldn't get enough of that story at the weekend. It was like, whoa, this is actually really big. And the fact that somebody lied under oath, I mean, that sounds pretty serious to me.
I don't know. Like you said, like that Phil Schiller guy, he was onto it. Like, we don't need to do this. Like, we're a huge company turning over billions of dollars. Why do we need to then steal from creators and screw other businesses out of finances they've earned? Just because we've got this app store. Like, why don't we be part of the solution, and promote the fact that people should upload to this platform?
He came out of it really well, in essence saying that. And also, I think he was basically saying, look, we're a creative company. Let's think of other ways that we can create new things to make money rather than look into the cash cow from the past. Let's do something new. Use our energy and time and efforts there.
It also goes against their marketing ethos that they project to the world. Like, we are for creators. We are for people who work in cafes. Like, whenever you see a MacBook or an iPad ad, it's like always a creative person working on the tablet. And creative people like to upload to app stores and, push their creativity out to the world. When in reality, in the back end, they're like, we're going to punish you and tax you for using that platform we're advertising to do, even though we've already charged you for the product, we're then going to charge you again. It's just it's very messy. I don't like it. And look, the Play Store does it. Samsung has that sort of commission revenue as well, but Samsung allow you to go get it elsewhere. Like, if you want to sideload an APK or if you want to sign up on a computer or a website directly, there's no expectation from Samsung to just have to sign in or log in or register through the Play Store.
How much does Samsung have to pay Google for the OS to use Android?
I actually don't know what the licensing is. Like
There's got to
Android's
be
an
some
open,
tie there, right?
Android's an open source. Like there's an open source version of Android that anyone can access, and I don't necessarily think there's a licensing fee
Oh,
involved
really?
to use the base of Android. But if you want to use Google services as part of that base of Android, like I think Huawei, for example, Huawei are banned from using Google services. So they just have access to the open source code of
Right.
Android
Okay.
and build their platform off the back of that. But there's no Google services, there's no access to it through there because it's all like a really base code level and then they build on top. Whereas I think Android and the Google services, I'm pretty sure there's a licensing fee involved. And I'm pretty sure whenever you create like a Gmail account, I think Google also get a bit of that too from the OEM. That
Because when I've
is,
watched Samsung, when I've watched Samsung events, there is a tie between Samsung and Google, isn't there? There's a certain
always they need each
yeah,
other. Google needs
yeah.
Samsung, Samsung need Google, and as much as they hate to admit it, probably they have to be best friends. Like
Mm,
because they're also competitors. Like Google make the
mm,
Pixel, and that kind of
mm.
caught everyone in the Android world by surprise because they're like, hang on a minute, you're meant to what? And
Yeah.
then
The software you're letting us use, you just gone and built a phone on it. Yeah.
exactly, and that kind of threw everyone off. But the Google haven't captured that much market share to really be a big concern at the minute. But anyway, that's another conversation.
Yeah. And
they license the Google services, I'm pretty sure, but Samsung is Google's largest Android vendor. So there's probably some deals in there that keeps both parties happy.
that's why I was wondering what's happening in the boardrooms there. Yeah. Because Sundar was in court for Google as well in this past 10 days because, of course, they want to sell off search. They want Chrome to be moved away from Google.
They almost have to, don't they? Or
yeah, I think so.
Chrome,
I think that's the way it's going.
Yeah.
And then and then they want to disenfranchise YouTube as well. It's all got to be splintered off into separate. I don't know. It's getting very, very, very messy. I don't know. It's interesting times in the tech world, so I just thought it was worth bringing it up and having a chat with you about it. And I know we're going to keep it a little bit shorter than normal. It's an odd time YouTube-wise. I don't know what it's like with the creators that you're watching, but the creators that I look to watch the most either aren't posting as regular at the moment or are very much doing filler video. In other words, I think there's a little bit of a lull. Now, I know you've got your event next week coming up, which is going to help
one last
you.
week as well.
Oh, yes, of course, we're going to talk ecosystems. Here's me letting you go to bed early. We've got to get into how important it is to have an iPad on, display on your fridge. Come on.
Let me sell it to you as in the way
Watch Daniel's video. It's really good.
Yeah,
It is really good.
yeah.
It was an event you went to this week, wasn't it, where they were showing the smart home in its full chatter.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd been invited to the other side of Samsung's business because they effectively have the mobile business, which is run semi-independently, I want to say. I mean, they're all housed under Samsung. And then,
of course,
consumer electronics and the home appliance business, which again is run kind of separately. And it's the first time I've been invited to that side of it, the consumer electronics. And like I knew the power of the smart things world and what it could do, but it's advanced so much since the last time I checked in with it, especially with these new appliances that are coming out this year. You mentioned the fridge. Okay.
I did.
Yes, it's pretty ridiculous. It's called the Family Hub. It's got a 32-inch...
Thank goodness you started off by saying that.
Yeah. It's got a 32-inch touchscreen on the door of the fridge.
Yeah.
And that's a full operating system that has apps and has its own widgets and services that you can launch from there.
And the first thing you did was watch yourself on YouTube on it. I loved it.
Yeah.
I know that was for effect, but yeah. So basically, in the kitchen, you can have that running as a media center, or you can look at what ingredients in your fridge, or you can see what recipes, in theory, you can make from the ingredients in your fridge. There's cameras in the fridge. That's the idea, yeah.
Yeah, so the whole sort of story is, let's say you buy something from the grocery store, you pop it all in the fridge, the cameras detect what you've put in the fridge, they've got AI to detect what it is, and then it adds it to your food list that's in there. And then it uses that list that it generates to create recipe ideas for you to be able to, I don't know, make from there. And let's say you've got an oven, like which they showed off the Samsung oven, you can send the instructions from the fridge to the oven to preheat to a certain level and cook for a certain time, all based off that whole sort of entire sort of ecosystem. But then the fridge itself, you can access from the phone. You can see and access the cameras when you're at the grocery store to see what's in the fridge. So if you're like going, hey, have we got milk?
Have we got this? Yeah.
Let's take a look. Yep, there's half a bottle of milk in there. I'll get one more. Like, that's the sort of, I guess, story about the fridge. And then obviously the touchscreen being 32 inches, no one needs a screen that big on a fridge. But man, wouldn't it be good to have? Like, it is, what a statement that would make in your kitchen when you walk in and see your kid's artwork on a touchscreen that you can then change out without having magnets everywhere. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that type of thought process. And you can imagine if Apple had a smart fridge, the world would end. The world would end. People would be talking about how amazing Apple are for developing a smart fridge.
I long for Apple Smart Fridge at the moment. Any content would be great, to be honest with you. But for those that are old enough in the UK, what we're talking about probably will be nothing to you. I'm sure the program being out there. We used to have a program called Tomorrow's World that used to look at these things. Right, that fridge and that kitchen was completely tomorrow's world. This is how we're going to live in the future. And I was looking at it thinking, I mean, part of me was, cocking a snoot thinking, come on. But then equally, that's where all innovation starts. Everything you look at to think, we don't need that. That's a crock of shit. But then you think, actually, okay, I can see there could be reasons that could be useful somewhere down the line. So should I have sworn and I should not have sworn?
Oh, no. My wife, I've got earphones in. It's all good.
It's all good.
Like, you can control all your devices from there. Like, there's your smart things list. So if you've got your air conditioners and your TV, that can all be controlled directly from the fridge screen. It's just I don't know. I just find the fact that you can connect more than just a mobile ecosystem fascinating. And it definitely expands Samsung's breadth. And talking about like what we're talking about with anti-competitive, Samsung's the SmartThings platform, you don't need Samsung phones to use. Like, you can get SmartThings and access that ecosystem on iPhones, on Pixels, on any phone. Samsung don't limit it because they think that, well, one, it's a business move. Imagine if only people with Samsungs could access the Family Hub fridge. People with iPhones would be like, well, I'm not changing my phone for a fridge. I'll just get another fridge. Whereas they're like, oh, if I can use this on my iPhone, I can get the fridge.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Actually, just backtracking very briefly, have there been any big legal battles that Samsung? Like, I mean, it's such a big company. There must be dirt under that rug somewhere, right?
Well, the one that immediately springs to mind is the iPhone versus Apple versus Samsung from like 2011.
What happened to that one?
Well, Apple sued Samsung for copyright because they thought Samsung infringed on a lot of patents when they developed the first Galaxy S phone. I think Galaxy S1 and S2. They said that they copied the design of the home screen and the UI, and they copied the shape and the camera placement of the phone itself for the S1.
Is
that by that point, though, yeah, sorry, read it.
So I was going to say, is that to this thread that I read to you just before we started recording? I saw this on Threads yesterday. This mistake haunted Steve Jobs forever. Jobs trusted Samsung to help build the iPhone. Then Samsung stole Apple's design and launched the Galaxy. Jobs' response: I'll spend every penny of Apple's $40 billion to destroy them.
Well, I think you can see. Sounds very Jobs-like. You can see.
He was another man not to cross. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I look like him, so
you do indeed.
I've got the insight. So like, there's
the DNA's there.
There's no question that Samsung imitated that early iPhone with the Samsung release. Absolutely. I know they have their reasons. They're like, oh, they put forward their case, they appealed, and I think the case ended up being settled for a smaller amount than what Apple were asking for. That's not that important. You can see it, right? You can see it if you have it laid out side by side. But the important thing is, by the point that Samsung got sued by Apple, by the time Apple got ready and were able to sort of halt the sales of these devices, Samsung were already established. They were on the S3 and S4, and they had their own unique identity and unique operating system that was so far removed from what Apple were doing that they didn't matter what happened with those first two phones in that court case, because Samsung was already an established number one smartphone maker in the market. And it's almost like that strategy paid off for them because they were able to imitate and then grow next to and then become bigger than in their own way out after they sort of took inspiration at first.
And equally, you could argue how much different does any slab phone really look? They're kind of rectangles with cameras on the back. I mean,
at that first point, what can you really do? Like,
yeah,
it's a square screen or rectangle screen with some round corners and a button. Like,
yeah,
there's not much more you can really do to a touch screen. And then Samsung obviously found their own way and their own design language and were able to cut their own unique selling points. But that first stage, yeah, that's the core case that I would say that Samsung litigated with pretty heavily.
And so we kind of went on a tangent there. So just going back to before we let you get some rest before this flu kicks in, I can see the eyes are looking more and more hooded as we go on.
Drooping.
I will wrap this up quickly. When it's quieter on YouTube for content, how do you go about things? Do you go deep dive into operating systems, into camera features?
Yeah, I think that's kind of been my playbook so far. Sorry. It's weird. This year's been, I haven't really had the chance to do that. Like last year, everything was kind of neatly organized from Samsung. Their launch was in January. Their One UI platform had launched in November the year before that. And there was kind of a big gap between the S24 sort of tapering off and then the Fold 6 and Flip 6 launching in July. And I was in Europe as well. That's when I went over.
That's right.
I think it's almost been a year since I went
almost a year. Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to get to is that last year was, that was my strategy. This year, though, Samsung with One UI 7 kind of being dragged out and now finally kind of launching, I've been busier than ever. Like my content that I've had to be pushing out is just exponentially gotten more, maybe not rushed, but it's more timely because it's relevant. Whereas, normally I would probably in this stage be planning how-to videos. Like there's one that I did last year that I haven't even ever got to do around the S Pen because I've just been too busy with catching up with other content. It's probably too late to do that other one now.
I haven't got your luxury of spoils. It's definitely quiet in Apple Street on product and stuff. It's, and I've got WWDC coming up in a month's time, but there might be some hardware. That's a bonus ball if there is, and if it is, they're talking about this smart home poddy thing. I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a lot. So really, I am hanging on now until September. Wish me luck.
That's a long time.
I've got to be creative, man. I've got to. I just did my studio tear down and desk tear down. So, but people really want it. I mean, it's performing terribly, but I was really happy to. It's really weird when you do that because you feel really naked. You're kind of exposing everything you do and how it works and what it really looks like behind the pretty scene. But it was one of those ones that needed making. It's out there now, so it's one of those ones that's done.
That's right. Sometimes you just got to do a video just to leave it there. I always, like I've said it before, like your video list is almost like a portfolio or resume, and you can't just have the same video on your portfolio. You need to show some diversification. Some even if you're not getting the views for it, it's just more good to have it sitting there on your list. Like that job you maybe only did for a year, like that's fine, but you need it there because it shows something.
Yeah, and right now, I could make videos quite regularly about the Mac Mini and the 16E, and I know they get views, but equally, can I actually say anything new about it 2 weeks down? No, I need to give them a break and me a break and just be be true to myself and not just trot something out that I know is going to get some clicks. I'd rather put something out I'm proud of, which I was, even though, and initially it's going to be one of those evergreeny ones. It'll be one of those ones if somebody's thinking of starting a channel, that's kind of what he does. And so it's weird times, but anyway, so we are going to let you get some sleep.
Thank you.
I will message you tomorrow and see what time you got to be up for football tomorrow with your kids.
We'll have to leave in about 11 hours. So it's
right.
It's
go get some sleep.
Yeah, I'll get some rest and then be up in the morning to get the kids ready and everything, and
when we're back in a fortnight's time, it'll be the three of us again, and you'll be able to talk about what you and hopefully a guest. Could be four of us.
I'm gonna try and get a guest.
Okay, good man. And also, you'll be able to talk about what we saw with the event this week as well. So we'll be out in the open by then. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, probably 3, maybe 4. Who knows how many we can fit on this screen. And we are doing shorts now as well. So there are shorts coming out on the podcast as well. Oh, yeah, I've been a busy boy. I don't rest. I'm continually looking. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. And until then, thanks again for all the new subs and the views and the watches. It really is appreciated. And we'll catch you soon for the next -16.
Bye, everyone.